Hey, welcome to another Tuesday Live podcast with myself, Jenn, and Joe. And today we have a really great treat for you. We've got a friend of ours who's been a creative finance real estate investor for a long time, Andrew Schlag. So welcome, Andrew.
Andrew. Thanks for coming on today. I'm so excited.
Thanks for having me. Great to be with you all.
Yeah, so we've actually connected quite a long time ago, just, following each other on social media. We were taught a lot of the same techniques by some of the same people too. So kind of running in that same circle, which has been great. But just getting a chat about you today, right? So first of all, while we're going to get started, where are you now? Like, who is Andrew Schlag? Give me that quick rundown.
Yeah, so brief rundown. Andrew Schlag, I would say I live in Louisville, Kentucky. So that's where I am a few weeks a year at least. And I travel a lot. My objective since over the last decade building the real estate investing business up is just been to really empower and impact people. So the last couple of years have been focused massively on that impact with a lot of charity work. A great friend and business partner of mine, we've started hosting some charity events, things of that nature. And then, of course, in the education business too, just growing communities and bringing real estate investors, but more importantly, just entrepreneurs and great-hearted people together. So that's the focus currently.
Yay. But it didn't start like that, did it? Obviously.
It did not. I was 21 and broke when I found out about real estate. So I was raised in a little bitty town called Belle Rive, Illinois. We was actually in the country outside of that town. So that was a town of 400 people.
Wow.
And my dad's a minister. So being a PK, preacher's kid, growing up in the country, bless you.
Thank you. I don't know if you saw that or not.
So it was interesting having that life. I encountered some challenges in my late teens with my health. And so that doing construction and all of that, I struggled to keep up at the time. And so I just began to look for another opportunity. And I had, for me, for the small town, I'd always dreamed big, but I didn't know what dreaming big was. My world was quite small. And so as I found out about real estate, as I began to step into that world, I just went all in, started wholesaling, and then learned the creative finance stuff. And in the first few months out the gate, I was broke and I just had a cell phone and I was dialing the heck out of the leads and driving to houses, hoping and praying for a contract. And that's where it began, was just that kind of grind and hustle mode at 21.
So what kind of gave you that initial inspiration? Like, hey, real estate maybe is the answer. The big dream, small town, that happens to a lot of folks, right? But what was it about real estate? Like, was there a certain thing that happened, or was there something that you saw, or was like, my gosh, I got to do this?
Yeah. So I had in the construction, I'd worked on a few flip houses. So I always had wondered, I was like, there's another side to this coin. I wonder what would happen to be on the other side of this coin. And so I talked to the guy who we had worked for on the flip houses, and trying to figure out how I could acquire some properties. So I just started Googling, finding all the traditional routes of acquiring rentals. And so I was like, well, if I can just save up enough money, in so many years I could buy a rental and I can rent it out. And I was dreaming big, in 5 years I could have 12 houses or whatever. I was laying it all out. And then I heard a radio ad that said I could do it creatively without money or credit. And that's when I jumped in with both feet. And a few weeks later, found myself in a seminar in Atlanta. And as they say, the rest is history. I just went to work doing exactly what I learned.
Oh, you went to work doing it. I think that's the key right there, right? You didn't just go to the seminar. You must have left and took some massive action.
Yeah. So actually, I was a little bit crazy, I guess. So before going to the seminar, I had heard that I should be creating leads, right? Finding sellers. So I started mailing letters and I started calling people, and I dropped 780 something, I believe, almost 800 letters in the mail right before I went to the seminar, which wasn't smart because I drove all the calls to my cell phone. And they was those handwritten yellow letters that was working really well at the time. And I got over 100 callbacks to my cell phone from that mail drop.
Wow.
Wow.
And so that's again, that was not the smartest timing for sure. Cause I'm at the seminar, these calls are happening and it didn't work very well.
Mm-hmm.
But what it did do, that was an example of how I intended to live. And I didn't even know it at the time. It was the fact that if I heard something that might work for me, I would jump in with both feet and give it a shot. And I think that's a very good reminder of the things that we see succeeding for you guys. You know, you're here, and I'm so glad to be here with you guys. And those listening to you guys, you know, are so smart for being in your world, because as you are doing what you do and sharing it with others, it all comes back to the fact you guys, you know, a few years back decided to start taking massive action and doing that. I think that's the common trait for all of us who have succeeded at a level.
So were you scared when the phone started ringing? Like you dropped the
Oh, heck
letters.
yeah.
Like that's the easy part. You send the letters out, okay, but then like the phone's ringing. You've got 100 people calling your phone. Like
I was terrified, and not all of them were really nice people either.
Mm-hmm.
can't imagine that.
Where'd you get my address? I'm calling the cops on you, you know, whatever. And all of that, you know, 21, like I'm a country kid. I didn't know people talk like that. And so I'm terrified out of my mind. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that was one of the most uncomfortable things that I had to do. And had I thought about it first, I probably wouldn't have done it. But thankfully I didn't have the sense to think about it. I just did it.
Yeah, the
And now the
reptile
phone's
brain.
ringing. What are you going to do? Ignore it?
Right?
Well, the whole point of it is, what I love is you found out, like, hey, like, do this, and you're like, okay, not only am I going to do it, like, I'm going to go all in and just do it, right?
Yeah.
And if people are like, and this is what I always figured, if really successful people are saying, like, hey, do this, it works.
Yeah.
Don't try to reinvent it. Like, just do what they say, and oh my gosh, you start getting results. Imagine that, right?
Absolutely.
So now you force yourself to take even more action, because you know your crops are growing, right? You planted the seed, and now all of a sudden you're like, I got to tend to this garden. I have to be answering all these calls.
Yeah.
So while you're going to a seminar, so what was that like? Those first few days, like obviously you're weeding out people.
Yeah, it was terrifying. And so I'm just taking the calls. Actually, I'm trying to get through this and just survive. You know, I didn't realize the influx that's going to come in, and I didn't realize what I didn't know. You know, all these people were asking me questions, and I don't know the first thing. You know, I'm going to buy your house. I don't know how. I don't know where the money's coming from. I heard creative finance is a way. So I'm lost, very lost.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think for me, it was the fact. And again, you know, since then, I've learned to be a little more calculated as a business owner, which is good. But there's something to be said just for that, what I'm going to refer to as blind hustle. 21 years old, somebody who's already done it says this will work, and I just went out and did it. And then I figured out how. And so I screwed up the deals. I was blowing up the deals right and left. Like, I know there was 4 or 5 deals in there that I screwed up. I guarantee you.
We know that feeling.
Yeah, that happened.
Absolutely.
To me too.
But the good thing was, at the same time, didn't think this one through, I put a bandit sign, handwritten, because I couldn't afford the 100 at once. I put a handwritten bandit sign on a dead end street. Probably not the smartest place to put it. But I got one call off of that bandit sign. And during that time, when all these calls are coming in from the letters, that one call from the bandit sign wound up being a house that I contracted for $12,000, and I assigned it for $15,000. So I got my first $3,000 paycheck from one call off of one bandit side on a dead end road. I think that makes the case for taking action, but never rely on one. And you kind of figure it out as you go in those beginning stages. Now, again, I think it's important, and this was a key step, but it's important to surround ourselves by people who are doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are in the game. Those listening to this are listening to you guys because they know that collaboration helps us all grow. You know, maybe a lead source you guys just tried, I ain't yet heard about, or I may have just found out about one that you guys hadn't started. So that collaboration is where it really began to snowball.
Right. So
I can't even believe that, a dead end street, and you actually like did the deal. Like,
yeah,
that's crazy.
you didn't need that many on that street. You just needed one good one.
Yeah. Right? It's on Job's Lane in Evansville, Indiana. I could take you to the spot.
Yeah, you never forget that first one. Huh?
But that's exciting how we always bump into that first deal. And that usually, what they call in the fishing term sets the hook, right? Now
Yeah.
you're like, oh my gosh, I just got a $3,000 check. Not only the check, because the check, you probably go spend that money, but the concept that it worked was priceless. Because if you've done it once, you can repeat that process over and over again. Maybe not do it on dead end streets, maybe look for a little more busier, but hey, dead end streets are working in Indiana. So giddy up, right?
Well, and just to circle back, like I get a lot of questions. Well, what if I don't have that $12,000, right? Because some people think they have to have the $12,000 to give the seller, but what you're saying is you assign that contract, so you essentially had no money into this deal.
Yeah, I think that's an important part again of surrounding yourself by the right people. Because I did assign the deal, and I'm okay with that because I got my $3,000 and moved along. At the same time, the guy who I sold it to rehabbed it, sold it for 138. And when you're around people, I probably had I been surrounded by the right groups of people and known what the heck I was doing, I probably could have partnered up with someone or done something different and made a lot more money. But I don't regret it because that $3,000 changed my life.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great way to look at it, is the fact that, number one, it doesn't have to be your money that pays for the deal. You can assign it, you can use private money, you can partner, you can do all sorts of things, except as long as you're taking an action towards something that will create revenue. There's a lady who I'm working with right now, and she hasn't yet got her first deal, but she met some people who needed their houses they bought on Creative Finance, sold on lease option. She said, I'll do that for you. So she teamed up with them and has sold 3 lease option deals for 3 other people and gotten 3 checks without doing her first deal. So it comes back to that mindset of how can I get to where I need to go?
Right. And now use that cash for some things in her business, right? So now that you've made a little money, now if you need to now get a return on that money, go do other things. So I love that. And
Absolutely.
You know what? A lot of people, there's always some way that you could provide some value to people. And just by meeting the right connections and being around the right people, there's more than enough money to be made in this industry for sure. It's just getting around the right people, and the opportunities are it feels like it's endless. And that's why I love this business.
Yeah. I think that's one of the more challenging things about real estate. And I say that sincerely, that some other businesses are pretty straightforward, right? But real estate, it's a world of opportunity, whether it be buying sub 2 and owner financing and lease purchases, or wholesaling, or fix and flipping, or buy and hold for the long term, or moving into the multifamily, buying notes. There's so many profit centers that it can be overwhelming. And I think that's a key if someone listening to this is newer, to definitely pick a path and stick with that. Don't get pigeonholed on that path. If another door opens, follow that. But if you pick that path and pursue that, that was for me. I said, I'm going to wholesale and I'm going to get deals on payments when I can. And those was my 2 pitches that I didn't know what the heck I was doing, but kept practicing until I finally did.
And both of those together make a lot of deals, make a lot of people happy, make some money along the way. And that's the best part. So I think you kind of dropped some really gold nuggets. So it sounds like to me, you learned, you went to a seminar, but now you started surrounding yourself with the right folks and, help you catapult that. So what did that look like for you when you first got started, being in a coaching program or however it was that you got started? And I know, but maybe everybody else doesn't know, so they want to hear it.
Well, and I'm glad you asked that, because I think if I could tell my younger self, I actually was just thinking about this last week. I said, if I could tell 21-year-old Andrew how to do better from the beginning, what would I tell him? And I said, I would tell him, focus on relationships first. Because I thought I needed money. I'm broke. I'm in debt from the hospital stay, $80,000. My whole life is over, right? I'm 21, never made over 30 grand in a year before. So I'm like, what am I going to do? So it felt like the world was crushing in. And so all I could see at that moment is, how do I want to help more people eventually. How do I get money now? And so for me, that was, okay, I'm going to get this phone call dialed in, which is good. Focus is good. But if I had to do over, I would have absolutely focused on relationship first, because if you focus on relationship first, the money always follows. And I didn't know that back then. And so I focused on the next deal. And I realized I lost time that I wouldn't have had to lose had have I just made those right connections. And so I think it's important to lead with value always. And that comes back to what you just said, surrounding yourself by the right people. How do I get around people who are closer to where I want to be than I am and offer them value? And it was interesting because I hired a mentor and I started to experience success. And I was a big giver. I just believed in giving and helping others. And so in doing that, because I didn't understand how to give, but how to be, would you say it, discerning in my giving of who I was helping, it was something that began to cost me a lot of time. And several deals come at me that I got into that was not at all what they was portrayed to me. And I was just, again, young and dumb and didn't look into them in depth. And I got burnt really bad. And so then it, went from hiring a coach to almost a negative mindset of like, crap, I have to put this guard up, this wall. And I think what's been so important to me on the personal side is to come back and say, yes, I'm going to be smart. You have to make sure things are fair and even. Deals have to be win-win, win for you and the seller. Can't just be a win for the seller and your business is losing money all the time, or vice versa. If it's one-sided, it's not going to be around for long. But if I can find the right people and give unlimited without the hope of return, I find it never stops coming back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and that's true. And that's why I think it does take a village to get through this. And that village might be an attorney, might be a contractor, it might be a cash lender, right? It might be other coaches, because like we've paid and we're still currently paying to be in masterminds and with a coach. We've got an amazing coach. And sometimes to be in proximity to these people, you also have to pay, which I think that's where a ton of value comes back and helps speed up the process. So based on Andrew, now, like you guys are slinging deals. I love it. But what are some of your favorite characteristics? And I want to go like creative finance. We talk a lot about creative finance. What are some things like, hey, like I love this about a creative finance deal?
Yeah. So I think for me, and I want to future pace anybody who's newer listening to this. You will come to the place, and I want you to picture in your mind you're already there. And I know you guys have already been here. And you look at it and you go, another deal, and they become very repetitive. And so for me, looking at it not as another deal, but as where is my mission, where is my purpose, and how does this deal serve me in getting there? That's been a huge motivator for me. And so what I love about the creative financing is the fact a 21-year-old broke kid can figure out how to get on the phone and negotiate deals and build a multi-million-dollar portfolio in a few months. Mm-hmm. And so understanding that, I'm going to say life hack. I mean, that is just phenomenal. Right now, rates are 7-8%. You can go collect deeds and take over debts that are 2 and 3% interest. Like, what the heck? Not to mention, I can do as many as I want this month. No banks run on my credit. So for me, it's just the unlimited growth capabilities. And having no money, if I'm sitting on a few $1 million and I'm looking for a good return, that's one discussion. But when I was 21 and broke and I had no money, like I wasn't looking for a return on investment. I had nothing to invest except my time and skills. And so I think the fact it allows us that ability with a little bit of grit and grind and hustle, we can build an empire in a reasonably short amount of time, way, way shorter than what most people are programmed to believe.
It's true.
Yeah, because if you're trying to burr like what we were first doing, which our same coach Ron was like, don't ever do that, right? Some of those first deals back in like 2008, 2010, 11, that's what we were doing. We were buying these houses. We were hiring contractors, renovate them. We'd rent them out and then refinance it, take extra money out too, which was helpful. But it was such a slow process. And my gosh, if we were going to accumulate this big real estate portfolio, it was going to take till I was 92 years old. Okay.
Right.
At that pace. And that's why we figured out back in 2016, there's got to be a better, smarter, faster way, right? Without having to come up with huge chunks of cash. And like, because the goal is to get cash flowing assets, that over time also appreciate, and get great terms on it too, where you're not stuck it with the banks telling you this month, this is the deal, take it or leave it. But now things are different. They're negotiable. And I think having that flexibility and adapting that creative mindset, my gosh, it does really feel like everything's way out there. And I think this is what kind of dials back when you had your job, or I've had my job in a car dealership, or Jen being a teacher. Like, no matter how hard you worked, they weren't going to pay you like, $1 million.
Right.
I mean, they might say, hey, here's an extra bonus, maybe like a donut or a pizza day on a Saturday, but they didn't like, oh yeah, you did great, here's another $500,000 bonus. That's not how it works. So that's what's with real estate. You can just put in that grind, and everybody's time varies, but considering the alternatives in a much quicker time, gain a lot of properties.
Absolutely. And I love that. And I love what you guys have done, in 8 years. It's incredible. It's truly incredible. And it's really inspiring just to look at someone like yourself and go, I can literally be in one position, and in a matter of a very short span, I can be in a whole different world of opportunity, all because of some knowledge that I was able to gain or some people I was able to be around.
Yeah. So I'm going to go on a favorite deal. Is there one particular deal that is like, oh my gosh, like everybody usually has like a favorite or two?
one that you literally can't forget.
Yeah. Or one that you can't forget, right? I've got a little bit of both of those.
Yeah. Oh man. Quite a few. Definitely, the most impactful had to be that first one, even though it was a small $3,000 payday. It was life-changing. And so that would be by far the number one, home run in my mind, because it made it real. And I think that's something for all of us. When we're doing something we've never done before, it has to become real to us. And that's what that $3,000 did. Because between a theory, between Jen and Joe telling me, hey, you can do this, and me actually going out and getting a check, it's just theory. I believe you. I see you doing it. But does that mean I can? And in the moment that wire hits my account or that check comes to my hand, it's like, oh my gosh, this is for real.
Yeah.
So definitely the first one. Second, I would say to that, I had a really, really cool deal I bought. And this is fresh on my mind because I was just in town seeing family. And I drove by it and I was like, oh my gosh. I bought it on Christmas Eve, 2015. And it was just a regular debt takeover standard deal. Unfortunately, the sellers were getting divorced. They was behind on payments. They was just going to let it go. It needed some updating. And I just bought that house, and it was, still early in the game for me. I started in 2014. This was 2015. And, I'm in the grind and hustle mode, and I'm Christmas Eve, find out about this deal. So I'll hop in the car, drive 90 miles to go contract it. And I get there, I get it. And it was just a really cool deal because I, of course, lease optioned it, and over the next 36 months or so netted over $72,000.
Yeah, bam.
So just a really cool, sweet, average, middle of the road deal when you're in the game doing it. But it was one that stood out to me as kind of that picture perfect, Christmas Eve deal. So hard to
Well, I was going to say, like, that right there, like, how many people wouldn't even go because it's Christmas Eve, right? Like, oh, I'll take care of it later, or maybe, but like after festivities and all said and done, like, what if you didn't go?
I wouldn't have got the deal. I guarantee you that.
Yeah. And so I just feel like that too is what people need to recognize. Like, the people who get where they get is because they go that extra mile, or 90 miles in your case. But that's a cool story. I like that one.
Well, also too, it's because you were hungry.
Yeah.
Right. you're hungry for it. And I think that's the whole concept of when you're getting into this business. If it's something where like you already had a big old meal and you're just like kind of pondering if dessert is it, like, no, you come to that table starving and hungry, like you're going to drive that 90 miles. You're going to go on Christmas Eve. You're going to get that contract, right? Because that's that difference of actually making it happen, or like, I'm going to try this out. If you're going to try something out, it's not going to go too well. But if you're hungry and I'm determined and this is what I'm going to do and I'm going to make it work. So like, if you guys are listening, Andrew's already dropped a couple of bombs. He took massive action right away, almost before he kind of knew what was going on. He kind of knew, but didn't know what was about to happen. Millions of calls, but did it, right? And then he's taking action, but he's also doing the work, putting in the extra effort. You know, like what Jenn did, going the extra mile, because so many people don't even go the first mile to begin with.
Yeah.
So just by going that extra mile and doing those extra things, it's paying off for you, right?
Yeah.
Dividends down the road. So what can anybody do with an extra 72,000 right now in your pocket?
Well,
Right.
that and like just the whole, I fell in love with the whole concept too. Like we started with rent to own, and I loved helping renters get into a home that they're going to be able to buy. But then like when we started working with sellers, and I saw like some of these, like you just said, like that situation, like they had no other option. They're going to let the house go. And so when you're like really helping people, like it does change your life.
It does. And I think on a deeper level, you talked about being willing to go that extra mile, and it comes back. You said hungry, and I like that word for sure. And I think a lot of us as a kid, we dream big, right? We want to help. We want to do, we're kind-hearted kids and have these big desires, and then life kind of knocks us down sometimes. And I think when we can just be inspired, as go back to your childhood, remember how excited you were for Christmas morning or whatever that thing was that was exciting to you as a kid. And for me, I feel that joy when I see others succeeding. We just hosted an event with a charity. It's like Make-A-Wish. It's called Dream Machine. And we partnered up with them on some things. And working alongside of them, and you see, an 8-year-old little child get their dream come true because of what she was able to do as far as raising the money. Yeah. When you was able to give into something like that, when you had a part in making that dream come true. And I think for me, that's what really inspires me every day to go out, because, having done this a decade, like I said, it becomes very repetitive. And in 2019, 2018, 2020, I got very, very bored and frustrated with the business. And I went through some challenges. I had a lot of challenges. And to find that new excitement has absolutely been about relating it to those who I want to help and the greater mission and purpose.
Well, the neat thing is, you've learned how to do it. You're actually doing it. You put in the work for a decade, right? Yeah. You've had some ups, you had some lower points too, which happens in any business. So that means it was a healthy business, right? And you've learned from those experiences and came away. But now it's about also still doing it and serving, but giving back, right? And showing others, showing the 21-year-old Andrew Schlag, who was from the small town, broke, like, hey, I'm putting this out. Like, you can do this too. And I think that's such a great spot to be at now, because you've earned your stripes. You did it, right? Yeah. And it's time to kind of share back and inspire others too of how they can do it. Because if I was fairly similar, many people know, like I was broke.
I think your stories are similar.
Yeah, I was 23. Okay, so I wasn't 21, but I was broke at the time. And my friend bought Ron LeGrand's course off a late night commercial, and it was the old VCR tapes and cassette tapes. I still have the thing. In the year 2000, and I had no money, and it was like make $3,000 in 30 days, and I was like, sign me up.
And you were in the hospital like 2 years prior.
Yeah, and I mean, I was in the hospital with Crohn's, so I spent my 21st birthday in the hospital in Boston. So just a lot of crazy stories, what gets you there. But when I did that first deal, and I had proof of concept, and then got that big old check, to me, this was like same thing you mentioned. It was life changing, right? Yeah. And next thing you know, I helped out that seller and both sellers in a jam. I helped out a buyer who was looking for a deal. They helped me out by me getting some money, and everybody across the board ended up high-fiving, and it was a great thing for everybody involved. So once I realized we could help a lot of people and make money too, I was like, this lines with like perfect. And there's plenty of times we help people, we don't make a dime, and that's fine, just by maybe giving some advice or sense of direction of what to do. But there's plenty others where you could do quite well on. And it's just about helping. The more people you could help, the more things you could impact. I think that's the key. So what are some of your favorite things giving back? And this is why I want to bring it up, because it's like you're always traveling, right? So like you're still doing real estate, but like you were in Italy not too long ago. And we do call you Mr. Worldwide because you are like everywhere, right? So now you're doing the business, but you're also mobile all the time. What is that like?
Yeah. So I think it was a shift. I think there's something I call limiting beliefs, and we can all have them if we're not careful, whether it be, sure would be nice to have a house like that, or it sure would be nice to have a car, whatever it might be. I sure wish I could travel like that. And it's not that we can't, it's just that sometimes our beliefs are limiting us. And I held a limiting belief for many years. I hired some team members to help me grow the business. I have a in-person office, and I had this belief that I needed to be at the office. This belief that I need to walk in and, high five my team every time we get a deal. And for me, it was that shift, that mental shift, realizing that everything nowadays can be done virtually. We can DocuSign stuff. There's notaries, there's closing attorney, there's title companies that are solely virtual, like everything. I don't need to be there. Somebody else can get photos for me. And so realizing that and stepping back from that little bit of a control freak that I was, and being able to release that, of course, yes, verify, get inspections if you have to, do whatever. But it's been a very freeing experience. And for me, being able to step back, bless you, step back and really hand that off, just be a business owner, work on the business, not in it so much, has been the pivotal piece. And then, of course, that's what has allowed me to build the community. And, we just, a bunch of our community members just traveled with us to Orlando. We just had a great time out in Florida. So that was fun. And some of us just went to, Italy. You said that a moment ago, Italy. Mm-hmm. And that was a fun trip. So just really being able to be mobile, to live a life that is that way, but then nomad, I guess. But then more importantly, being able to use that. We just hosted the charity event in LA that I was referencing, the Dream Machine. Before that, we went to San Francisco and was partnered with Kids Against Hunger and packed over 14,000 meals. And so just, again, being able to do that, for me, I hate to see suffering, especially in kids or young people that can't help themselves. And nothing makes me smile more than seeing them be able to be empowered, and not just the deed of them being able to get food or them being able to get some money to take a trip they've dreamed of, but the fact that as a child, they're so impressionable. And when they see their dreams come true, and I think as adults, sometimes we need that too, because it lights something in our brain that says, oh my gosh, anything really is possible. Mm-hmm. And the more we can do that for others, adults too, but the more we can do that for those around us, the more we're shining a light in the world.
Mm-hmm. It's so true, especially because it can be dark at times. So I love hearing those stories, and all the organizations that you're a part of are just super blessed to be able to have people like you be able to show up and have that, because like you said, if you were going into the office every single day, you wouldn't have that opportunity. So more and better options come along so that you too can give back in those great ways, because some listening, they're just trying to get their first deal. So that's why we started with your story in the beginning. But from 2014 to 2024, all that has happened is now enabling for you to be able to do that, and that's incredible.
Yeah, I think something that we often underestimate, the compounding interest effect, and you said that, Jen, about the last decade. Mm-hmm. And the same thing, I call it the snowball effect in business, in real estate. And, in 2014, I'm dialing all these people. Well, in 2015, a bunch of the people I called in 2014 start coming back because, as you know, follow-up's the key. And so the snowball builds. But not only is the snowball building, there's a tipping point that comes, because the work I put in 2014 starts to reward me in 2015 with more deals. But more importantly, Now deals that I'm closing in 14 and 15, some of which I still reap the benefits of today, cash flow wise. And so that snowball, that momentum that you're building is very important to ask, where am I headed with this? Because my mission, my objective, I didn't know the Dream Machine existed or Kids Against Hunger when 2014. What I did know, though, was I wanted to impact people for good. So the snowball I started building back then has continued to roll and grow. And that happens whether it's in our investing, whether it's in our real estate portfolios, whether it's in the network we build, the community that we surround ourselves by. Or, there's people, a great friend of mine, a realtor who I've sold probably more than a dozen houses to over the years, was someone, although I didn't buy a single house out of those first 750 something yellow letters or 780 something, she called me from that, and we began a friendship, and we've sold each other and bought stuff from each other over the years and made a lot of money together, all from that. So that back to that snowball, that momentum effect. And I think that's very important to realize, so that we know that, hey, success is not, did I get a big check today? Success is, did I take the action that is building momentum? Because at the end of the month, if I've called the sellers that I said I was going to call, if I've went to the events I said I was going to go to, if I've connected with at least the 25 new people I committed to connect to, I didn't see the dollar effect yet, but I did succeed because I kept my commitment to myself and I built momentum. And if it didn't come in month one and it's good to reevaluate, but if I'm doing what I know I should be doing to get that effect, I know in month two it's going to come. And if it doesn't, it's going to in month three, because I'm building that snowball.
Yeah. And it's that compounding effect. You put in that little bit of work in the beginning and you don't see other results right away.
I was going to say, it's deceiving, because a snowball you can actually see, right? You're like, it's little and it's getting bigger, but like, we've looked at each other multiple times and we're like, oh my gosh, like, I'm like, how did we get here? Well, we got here because obviously we did the work, but yeah, when you're in it, you don't really see what it's doing. And like you said, you don't know, like from 10 years from now, like, you have an idea, like, I want to impact people, but you didn't know these organizations were there. And so that's really important to recognize that too, that you are making, like, the people you call today, everyone listening, like, make those seller calls that you have on your desk right now and follow up. That was the big lesson I learned really early on, was how important follow-up was.
Absolutely.
Well, and I think too, it's some of these small things that you learn along the way that you're like, okay, great. Like, this is why we share so much. It is about some of the smallest tactics that you can get somebody. I was like no real estate at all, and learning from some of these tactics from a Ron the Grand and so many other people that we have. That's why, like, so many of these things are out there now, and YouTube is full of it, right? There's so many different books out there you could read and things like that. But I'm always like what Andrew kind of said earlier, is like, align yourself with the people who are doing like what you want to accomplish. So it was that realtor. Maybe he didn't make any of those deals from those first 100 phone calls, but the connection he made from that end up paying dividends down the road. So like, what kind of circling back to it all is, you're going to be putting in some work in the beginning, and it's like planting a seed. You're not going to see your plant grow. You're not going to see the crop go overnight. Like, so if you wake up tomorrow and you made a seller call and you didn't get a deal yet, don't be like, this doesn't work, right?
And push back the feelings. Because I know for me, like, I'm a little more of an introvert. So like, in-person meetups, I'm kind of like, oh boy, here we go. He loves them. But like, every time I go, I have a great time. But like, you have to kind of push past, like, I don't feel like doing this today, and you just have to do it. Do you feel like that some days?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's a very good point, because all of us, as I struggled to go to events in the beginning, especially being a little bit of an introvert back then and not having the successes that I do now. I didn't feel, I don't know, competent to be in the room, I guess. And what I found that really took that pressure off of me when I went, I used to go thinking, all right, can I get a deal tonight? And when I took that pressure off myself and I said, I'm not going to do anything except serve. And that was a huge shift for me. When I talk to someone, and my whole objective in talking to you is just to find out who you are, what you do, and what you need. If you need someone to take care of X, and I have the resources, I have the ability, or I know the person, I just connect people. And once I started going with that servant's mentality, everything shifted for me. And that was exactly what you said. What we don't feel like doing commonly is we just do it because we know it's the right thing to do. And those actions continue to add up. And I think it's not only doing what we don't feel like, which is absolutely true. I think it's figuring out how everything we can do can push us toward the mission and the purpose. Because then, I don't no longer look at a chore. When I walk in a room, I don't think, well, crap, I got to turn on the light. It's dark in here. I just flip the light switch because it's a habit, right? I think there needs to be light. And so if I can really be thinking of the objective, get light in the room, I'm going to flip the switch. My objective is get checked to help this cause. The cause is just a thing that happens between here and there. And I think it's a very important shift in the way we view things that continue. And, when's enough? It's never enough if it's not about us. And that comes back to our inspiration and our motivation.
So I'm going to take a little bit of a left turn on this because this is a question I know we hear a lot of times. So you guys are obviously doing deals, right? And you got a whole network of folks doing deals. What are some of your channels that you guys seem to be finding these good deals from recently? Are there certain things that you find like, hey, Joe, I know in my community, this has been working really well, or just some insight for folks listening of like, hey, like I'm a great real estate investor. I've got tons of people in my group who are real estate investors, and this is what we're finding success with. Is there any tips that you have or things that you like?
Yeah. So none of these work in Indiana, but if you're in any other state, they do.
Of course.
Sounds like somebody else we know.
And for those of you who don't know, that's where I started buying houses. And the majority of my house buying happens in the state of Indiana today. But I've noticed it shifting a bit. So we've had a lot of success over the last, I'm going to say 2 years with the mailings. It's a third-party mailing company. It used to be called REI Vault, and they've sold a time or two. They've changed their names, but they manage for you. So it's like a couple grand base management fee. So it takes an investment for sure. But that's something that if somebody listening to this is out doing deals, that's a asset, a resource that served us very well as far as returns. They just mail letters. I think it's a 7-series sequence of letters. That's served us well. Pay-per-click. I've used Fast Home Offer. It served me for about 5 years. Another one I've tested, Liberty Leads. Haven't had tremendous success with them, but some of our community is. So it depends on area specific, what company, but it all comes back to the same, which is pay-per-click. So Google Ads and Facebook follow-up. Those are 2 really good ones. Another one, in certain cities, we have found the bandit signs still work to a certain extent. Certain cities, not such a great idea. So not recommending them, just saying I've seen them work. I also know that on Facebook Marketplace, I haven't done that one for a few months because our inbounds have been steady from the pay-per-click, pay-per-lead stuff. But anytime we've been low on leads, I go on Facebook Marketplace. And as recent as probably late last year, I was going on Marketplace and grabbing deals very easily. And so it comes back to, if you're outbound dialing, you're going to dial probably hundreds. If you're getting them to call you, it's going to be by the dozens. So just very important to determine, I always say at least 3 lead flows and get those flowing to you that way. And for us right now, it is the pay-per-click, pay-per-lead stuff, and they're finding us.
Nice. So when you guys are doing your marketing, are you gearing it towards these creative finance deals? Because people ask that question, or is it more of like we look at any deal, or are you looking at like, hey, we're looking for junkers? Is there one thing particular you're targeting?
Yeah. So we have tried many marketing messages. We stick pretty tight to the fast cash offers.
Nice.
And when we get them on the phone, we do make fast cash offers, and then of course we also offer terms. And so we ask a series of questions to qualify them. And about 60 to 70% of the deals that come in from those ads wind up being terms deals because they want more money over time. The other, call it 30%, we wind up buying for cash.
Wait a minute. You mean there's a bunch of people out there who want more money for their house than a cash offer?
Yes.
Imagine that. And this is the point of why we go back to even creative finance, is because
Yeah.
when I first got started, when Andrew first got started, we were looking for those wholesale deals, that junker that were getting at a big discount that needed a lot of work. And in the beginning, I will tell you, I can't tell you how many deals I messed up and missed on, because when somebody would say, Joe, I have a turnkey house, it really doesn't need any work, but I need to sell it for XYZ reason, and they wanted either retail or pretty close to retail. Before I knew creative finance, I would just say, sorry, go list it with a realtor. And it almost makes me sick. So I have to be careful not talking too much about it, because like I think of how many deals that we just passed on without saying, well, I can buy that if you're open to terms, and I can pay your price if you're open to terms. And by having that extra tool in our toolbox is when the key to our success. Because if we were just wholesaling, you'd make a lot of money. You do very well. There's nothing wrong with that. But the concept of making money while you're sleeping, right, and appreciation and writing off depreciation and getting those large non-refundable option deposits, and kind of marrying those two strategies. So what you touched on earlier is wholesaling, maybe even doing some fix and flips, and then on some of these prettier deals, buying those with terms, right? And then our favorite strategy, which is finding that lease option or rent to own tenant buyer who's going to move in and rent for a bunch of years until they're able to qualify. And then even one extra strategy is how to do these creative finance fix and flips, because now you're able to get into some of these deals with just a few $1,000s in closing costs, and then just pay for the renovations. And you're into a deal now too, doing a fix and flip. So once you learn this, my gosh, like it feels like
it's a never ending.
It's a never ending thing, right? And so
I agree.
loading up your tool belt, that's the key.
But like you said, don't get shiny object syndrome. Like learn one strategy really well, get around people that know others. Like there's opportunities there, but you won't know everything all at once. Like it comes over time.
And I think the important part, I started looking at it in the beginning as like, crap, what's a wraparound mortgage versus lease option versus, so like it can be overwhelming, or for me it was.
Oh yeah.
And what I finally realized was I don't need to know how to structure 400 ways. What I need to know how to do is ask a great question, because I've never structured a deal to this day. I've asked sellers questions and they structure the deal to me. They'll make me the offer because I asked them, what's the least you'll take a month? What's the least you'll take on price? Usually we buy with nothing down. Well, you're wanting 15K in equity. If we pay you that on the back end, is that okay? So we ask them to structure the deal, and we do what works for them and for us. So when we can take that pressure off of our mind of figuring it all out, and we just go, all right, I need to get really great at asking questions, that changes the framework of the basis of when we're doing the calls.
Boom.
That's the key, guys. And we kind of all sing the same tune.
And I feel like everybody wants to make it harder. Like they want to, bring this spreadsheet and give all this stuff, and I'll split up your equity and the payments and and I'm like, no, just, ask the questions and then they'll make you the offer. It almost sounds too easy though, I think.
Well,
I agree.
I'm not going to talk any smack, 'cause I'm not going to say a name. But I was listening to somebody doing live seller calls on YouTube.
Oh.
And when they made the offer to the seller on a seller financing deal, they were like, I will pay you X amount. Like they're telling the seller everything that they're going to do. I'll pay you this much in interest, and I'll pay you this much in payments. And like, you don't know if that's a seller, if they would have done more or less, right? So it's not always about what you will do. Find out what the seller's willing to do. And maybe they even give you a little bit better deal than you thought. Right. And you'd be pleasantly surprised. So that's like, we've got a deal down here in Florida. At first, she did not want to do seller financing. Some of you have maybe tuning in heard about this deal.
We keep talking
but
about
this
it.
is right next to Anna Maria Island. It's in a really great spot. You're probably 10 minutes from the beach. It's one of the best beaches in the world. Lady's got a house built in 2006, and she wants to sell it. And she's frustrated because it's sitting on the market and not selling. She reached out to us for a cash offer. House is beautiful. Needs a roof, and that's not because the roof is bad. It's because we're in Florida, and if you have a roof more than like 10, 15 years old, they want it tore off anyways. So it's about a 18-year-old roof, so it's time to be replaced. So getting into that property, at first she's like, no, I will not do it. And now we had the conversation with her. Jen actually did it, and now she's open at terms.
First she tried to refinance and then found out she couldn't.
Right.
And so now she's just really in a pickle. Her husband had passed away. She's moved in with another man. And now, what can she do? She's got this house that she can't continue making payments on. She's not living in it.
Yeah.
So we're in negotiation phase.
Because the thing I love about it is her payment, her PITI with taxes and everything is about 2,300 all in. And it rents for probably a little over 3,500 a month. As a long-term rental, you can't do short-term there because of the HOA restrictions.
So she wants a lot down. So it's kind of her sticking point.
Yeah, and that goes, well, she's got some debt to pay off. So at first she wanted $100,000 down, and now she's talking, okay, I'm closer to $60,000 down, which is still a little on the high side. So we're continually to have talks with her, and it's a convenience thing for her is to be able to have it quick sold and get that $2,000 payment off her back every month, right? If she could get some cash to pay her bills, because she's already moved on, she got a new man, right? So it's really about getting that $2,000 payment off of her back and giving her some cash to pay back some past bills that she's got. So we're trying to work that out now, but you find them even in these areas where, it's a $750,000 home, just about, right? And it happens on the lower end stuff. It happens on the more expensive things too. So you'd be surprised. We were talking to a seller on Amelia Island right outside of Jacksonville, and they have a $3 million house and they're open to terms. Right next to the water. So I prefer the cheapies because those are a lot easier to deal with, $150,000 home. But some of these big deals, they're out there too. Do not think they don't work on all price houses.
Yeah, and you said a couple things there that are very important. You was naming out the hot buttons, which I think is something that instead of figuring out what offers we make, asking questions and finding out the hot buttons is where our brain power should be. And that's exactly what you guys have done. And that's how building rapport and asking those questions, because if her objective was, hey, I want to live here for another 8 months, that's a totally different negotiation than I'm out of the house. I just want some cash in my pocket and this payment off my back. And once we understand what the seller needs, we can either give it to them or meet somewhere. That's the key. And I think that's the part that's it's easy to get caught up in the weeds of making offers and skip over the what does the seller need, when what does the seller need is actually what gets us to the solution. And we get paid in direct proportion to the size of problems we solve.
Oof. Yes, we do.
So if anybody's looking for a deal in the Bradenton, Sarasota area, 10 minutes from the beach, this is a deal. If somebody's looking for one, reach out because this is going to be a beauty too. And it's a great property.
Rate?
I don't know. It's stupid low.
Yeah, it was in the 3s, I think.
Yeah, it's crazy low. She's got a super low payment. She's got, the house is great. It's got an in-ground pool in the backyard, and the location is the spot too. So we're still in.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
We've even talked about
that house.
I was like, do we move into it?
I know. I'm thinking about it. There's no lanai around the pool, which could get annoying, but
just because of leaves falling in the pool and have to clean it more.
Yeah, definitely. We'll keep you posted.
So that's the cool thing about creative finance, guys, too, is you're gonna come across a lot of deals that you're gonna make money with and help sellers and all the things, but you're gonna come across potential to have your primary residence. And I know every deal that we look at that's a really nice house, I'm like, hey babe, what do you think of this one? Yeah. But we've had a lot of our clients buy their own properties through creative finance that now they move into, and I'm probably sure you've had a bunch too that have done the same thing.
That's such a cool feeling.
Absolutely.
It doesn't just work for investments; it can work for your own house too. So we only have a few minutes left, but if somebody wanted to,
Mike's the buyer. He said.
There you go, Mike. Well, thanks for tuning in, buddy.
Yeah.
We got to talk then. It's a nice deal.
Yeah, we had a couple people say, hey, I want to shout out another Ron student, Adam, saying hello to us.
What's up, Adam?
Yeah.
Blaine's got a question.
Blaine has a question.
So you got Andrew here. So we got a great answer for you. Go ahead, Andrew. You got this one. Go ahead.
What options do you have if the house has a balloon coming up for the seller, but the rent-to-own tenant is not ready to buy?
That's a great question. So first off, we always get as long as we can with the seller. And second off, we never give the tenant buyer more time than what we got with the seller. That's a way for disaster right there.
Yep.
Now, in the instance, which has happened to me over the years, where let's say we had a 5-year balloon, put a tenant in, and they was still not cashing out, I will go in maybe year 4.5, and talk to the seller. And I don't remember the last time a seller didn't extend for me. If you have a good pay history with them and you have a great relationship, a couple of times we ended up just having to put it on the open market and sell it, Get a long enough period, it's appreciated in value, and there's equity there, and there's a profit to be made. So you have a few different options.
Mm-hmm.
But communication solves most problems. So
bingo.
not ignoring it. Definitely just deal with it. Ask for extension, whatever it might be. You'll always figure it out as long as you've got good deals. Bad deals is where problems start arising.
Wait a minute. You mean, don't wait till the last second till it's blowing up on you, right? No,
right.
and that's
well,
how
but he's making a huge point. I feel like with the influx of with creative financing and learn like a lot of free education out there, like people are getting themselves into pickles. Like they're getting a 2-year term with the seller, and then what? Right. And so right now with this market,
I've seen that a lot actually, where somebody has did like a really, really short term and they thought they were either going to refi and the rates went up, or they thought they were going to sell it and the market's now stagnant. It didn't appreciate like they thought they would. And now they're in a situation where the sellers are like, hey, right, coming with the pitchforks and torches. Well, because you put yourself in a bad predicament in the beginning by getting a very short term. So for me, just like what Andrew, like the shortest term that I really want to do is a 5-year term. And even that's a little too soon for me.
You usually try to get an extension.
Right. And I'll say if I do a 5-year term, I want to have like the ability to have a 3-year option to extend it longer. We're already written in the agreement. So if we need to extend it, I can. And I think the second part of it too is if I do a shorter term, because it's where I'm doing a fix and flip. Right. I'm buying it with creative finance. I'm going to clean it up real quick or do some light renovations. And then the plan is to immediately list it on the market. That's the only time I would do a shorter term. I have one of those going on in New York right now. And I think we have a 9-month term on that one. So, but other than that, if you're going to keep it for a tenant buyer to go in, or you're going to turn it into an Airbnb, don't go for those short terms because it could cause some issues too. But if it does come down to it, like you said, you can always talk to the seller about extending it. And if you've paid them well and you're communicating with them of the situation, what's going on, hopefully they're going to want to work with you too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Damn. How much of a discount are you getting?
Are you offering the fast cash deals to get the terms?
That's a good question. Comes back to the seller making us the offer. So we ask what's the least they'll take. Most of the time we're getting them just for fast math, 30 to 50% of what they'll be worth when they're completed. We do use the 70% of ARV minus repairs equals Mayo formula. Equals take the full value of the property minus times 70% minus repairs, and that's going to be your maximum allowable offer. But I don't remember the last time I paid that much cash. And again, it's a twofold offer. If someone's telling me they want $70,000 cash for a $100,000 property, I'm going to probably offer them 75 on terms and 35 on cash or something. You see what I'm saying? So we're always going back and figuring out, and I don't care which they take because I'm going to make more money on the 75 probably terms than I will the 35 cash because I'll get to make it over time. So I'm totally detached from which offers they take.
Bam, buddy.
Detached. I love that. So you're not emotionally invested in the outcome every single deal.
Exactly right.
Well, and like
which
you
is
said,
hard when you're first starting. You want your deal. I get it.
Yep. But you have 2 offers. So if they chose either one of the 2, you're perfectly fine with it. But ideally, you paying more for the property, twice as much in this situation, actually is probably better for the seller and puts more money in your pocket. Mm-hmm. So you can see why a terms is a lot more attractive to so many more people. So if you're trying to wrap your head around that, that's why we have folks like Andrew on here. He's a great, great dude. So definitely make sure you give him a follow, and we're going to drop that in a minute. But also too, a wealth of information and a huge inspiration of, somebody who came from a town of 400 people, had the dream, saw the dream, put in the action, did the work. It wasn't always as smooth as, we love to show it on Instagram. Not saying that you do, but it shows on Instagram. It's a little bit of a roller coaster, but now here you are. And not only have you done so much, but you're also giving back, not just to the real estate community, but to, nonprofits and organizations that really align with you. And it's an amazing thing to see. So bravo.
Yeah.
Bravo.
Thank you. And thank you both. Thank you so much for everything you do for the community. I love seeing people succeed, and you guys lead people to success. And I appreciate and respect you guys so much for that. And thanks for having me on. It's awesome. Always getting to see you.
Well,
Yeah,
so great to see you.
Yeah, so if somebody wants to give you a follow, we are dropping the links down below. But if you're listening to the audio, you're not gonna see that. So Andrew, where should they go find you?
Find me on Instagram. Find me on Facebook. Find me on YouTube. It should be Andrew.Schlag everywhere. Andrew.Schlag.
Bam.
There you go. Go give him a follow, guys. He is the real deal, and I know we enjoy following you, and I can't wait to see you again, hopefully soon.
See you soon.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.